you doing? Hope you're all having an absolutely fantastic day. I should just check what camera I'm on as well over here. Welcome to the, I think we put it as the easiest music theory lesson ever. That's the plan. And basically, I just want to go through as many of the basics as I possibly can. Rich, I'm seeing all sorts of things on the screen. Actually, it's all right, as long as I can tell what things I've got on. Sorry. We're still getting together with the tech. Can you believe it? So yeah, basically what I'm going to do is start like at the very, very beginning of music theory and harmony and how it works. And we're talking about tones and semitones and a little bit about the major scale and how the major scale was formed, why there are some sharps and flats in some places where there aren't others. Then we'll look a little bit at basic chord construction and how chords fit together in a key. So that's the rough schedule. Now, what I'm aware of with these topics is that they're pretty well covered as part of the practical music theory course. So if you've got questions about it, there must be something in the course that I didn't explain well enough. So I'm going to do my best to explain it now with the combination of the piano and the guitar. I've got a nice little overhead cam that I can flick to here so we can see the piano as well. Where appropriate, I'll try and explain some things there as well. But the plan is that I'm going to go through a little section and then ask for questions. So if you've got questions at that point, you want to pop the questions over in the Q&A box. So remember, there's two chat areas. If you're new to this thing, there's the Q&A area where you can ask questions, and there's the chat. The chat is just for like, hey, how you doing? I'm from wherever, and like chat with your classmates or whatever. It's all totally fine, whatever. I'm not able to see that. I could, I just don't. There's too many other things going on. And there's another thing, a Q&A box. And in the Q&A box, you can type in questions that you've got. And I've got a fantastic moderator here, Richard, one of the approved teachers who has his own club yesterday. And he'll be filtering the questions for me. And then either he'll ask the question or you can come on and ask the question yourself. That's the run of the mill. We've also got Fanny on board as well. Thank you, Fanny, for coming in. She's helping with keep everything under control and working smoothly as well. So I'm just going to start off. We're going to talk first thing about tones and semitones. Now, the concept of tones and semitones is a really, really important one. It's very, very simple, but it's really, really important. A semitone is the smallest interval that we have in Western music. Wait, that sounded weird. Western music suddenly just jumped out at me. Really threw me off. That was very strange. Anyway. And it equates to the smallest step we can have in pitch, either up or down. And on guitar, that equates to 1 fret. So if you go from 1 fret, say the 5th fret, to the 6th fret, you've gone 1 semitone, 1 step. If you go from any fret up or down by just 1 step, it goes 1 semitone. Now, if we go 2 steps, so like we have a fret gap between things. I can, seeing as I've got the camera here, I might as well use it. If we go from any one note, miss one and play the next one, we'd call this a tone. So this is the distance of a tone, and this would be the distance of a semitone. From 1 fret to the next fret. It could be anywhere, here to here. That's a semitone, or here to here. Doesn't matter where it is. If it's 1 fret to the next fret, up or down, it's always going to be a semitone. And a tone is going to be the same, except it's the gap here. There's a gap in between. So it's 2 semitones, like from here to here and here to here. Okay, so there's a gap in the middle. Okay, this would be a tone. And it goes, again, it doesn't matter if it's going up or down. So the reason that's so important is because it ties into this thing, the major scale, which we're going to check out shortly. But before we actually go that far, I want to show it to you on piano, the tones and semitones thing, because it gets a little bit more interesting there, because there's a few strange things happen in music theory land. Sorry, got stuff all over the place. Here we go. So we got the piano's there. There we go. Somebody's trying to enable translation. I don't want to see those things. Okay. So this note here, when you've got the 2 black notes, the note immediately to the left of those, this note here, this is the note C, right? Now, when we go up here from this note to this note, you can see there's a note in the middle. So this is a semitone, and that would be a tone. This distance here between those two is a tone. So each one step from C to C sharp, from C sharp to D, D to D sharp, these are all semitones, right? Now here, look, E to F is also a semitone. So other ones like C to D, that was two steps, wasn't it? C, step, step, that's to D, that's a tone. D to E is also a tone. Now, E to F, there's no note in between, so this one is only a semitone. It's really important. You'll see why. It's much more obvious on piano than it is on guitar, because we don't have black and white notes. This one's F, F sharp, G. So F to G is a tone. You should note as well, it's the motion of two steps that makes it a tone. So if we went, say, from F sharp to G sharp, that would also be a tone, because it's 1, 2 steps up. G to A is also a tone. G, G sharp, A. A to B, A, A sharp, B. It's a tone again. And B to C. That one will be a semitone because it's just one step. But like I said, it could even be like this note to C. This is a B flat to a C. This would be a tone as well because it's gone B flat, B, C. 2 steps, and we've made a tone. So this tones and semitones thing becomes a pretty big deal because it's how we construct the major scale. There's another way of looking at it as well. Let me just, I need to flick over to OBS now and choose laptop screen. Hey! And then we got that. So look, if you look at the very top of the screen there, I'm not sure if you see my, I don't think you see the cursor, but do you see the cursor if I move it around on there? Yeah. So there's the A is at the top, and you can see there we go to the next note is A sharp or B flat, and then the next note is B. So you can see in between the note A and the note B, there's a note, and it's got two names, A sharp or B flat. Now, how do I go back to Web Presenter? That one. So it's really important you get this idea that the sharps and flats can have two different names. In fact, a lot of the white notes can have different names as well, but that ends up getting super confusing. Now, the idea of a sharp, the easiest way to remember a sharp is that if you sat on something sharp, you would jump up. Okay, very simple to remember. Okay, if you saw a sharp, you would jump up. So a sharp always makes a note one step around the clock, one fret, one step on the piano higher in pitch by one semitone. Okay, sharp, sit on something sharp, jump up. You go up. On the guitar, you go up. Always up if it's a sharp. Now the other one is a flat. So if you get a flat tire on the car goes down. That's how you remember, okay? Or if a balloon bursts and it's floating and it goes flat, it's going to go down, okay? So flat is down. So when we go back to look at the note circle, no, wrong one, that one, we can see here this in a clockwise direction is higher and in an anti-clockwise direction is lower. So A sharp or B flat end up at the same note. If we go back to look at that on piano, here's our note A. So A sharp, so we've gone up one from A, or B flat, and we end up on the same note. A sharp or B flat, same thing. Now, there's a great word if you want to impress people at a party or something, the name for a note that sounds the same but it's got a different name, and that is an enharmonic equivalent. I taught that to my daughter to show off to a piano teacher. He was a bit surprised that she got that term. Anyway, so that's an enharmonic equivalent, is a note that sounds the same but has a different name. Now, One of the questions I'm going to preempt, because a lot of people always ask this question, is about E sharp, and say, is there such a thing as E sharp? Can you have an E sharp? Well, you definitely can. If you go back to the piano again, you think, well, there's my note E. If I make it an E sharp, I sit on something sharp, so I go up, we end up on there. So E sharp has the same sound as F. So then there's a very good question that comes along, which is, well, why would you ever use an E sharp? And we're going to return back to that one a little bit later on when we start looking at the major scale. Okay, I'm hearing random stuff again. Richard, is the automatic mute thing not behaving itself today?
Everybody is muted. I wonder if you have echo cancellation on.
I don't know if I have echo cancellation on. It was definitely other voices other than me, but anyway, it's not a big deal. Where do I find that? In the audio settings? No, audio settings. Original sound for musician. Echo cancellation is on, yeah.
Try turning it off.
Okie dokie, I'll do that and see what happens. Okay. Anyway, so that's tones and semitones. So semitones, smallest interval that we use in Western music. It's 1 fret on the guitar. It can go up or down, a semitone. 1 fret, 1 step on the piano, 1 step around the note circle. Tone, 2 semitones. 2 frets on the guitar, 2 steps on the piano, 2 steps around the note circle. Really, really important. Sharps and flats, when something is sharp, it is raised, it's gone up because you sat on something sharp, you jumped up. Is a sharp raises it by 1 semitone, any note by 1 semitone, and a flat lowers a note by 1 semitone. So if you've got any questions about tones and semitones, anything that you don't quite understand regarding tones and semitones or sharps and flats, please pop them in the Q&A right now. Richard, is there anything, have we got any takers on questions on sharps and flats yet? Or have we got tumbleweed?
No, keep going for the moment.
Keep going? We're good? Okie dokie. So I think the next step along, once you've got a grip on sharps and flats and tones and semitones, is understanding the major scale. Now, the major scale on guitar is a lot more complicated on piano than piano. Piano, because of the fact that we've got the black notes and the white notes, it really clarifies stuff. So you'll probably see when I start explaining it to you how obvious a lot of the theory is. If you want to get into piano, it's a really, really great tool. It'll really help your guitar playing, having an understanding of piano, even if it's just like a, supermarket brand electric keyboard that you plug in and it's got its own speakers and, it doesn't really sound like a piano. It'll still teach you a lot. So I would definitely recommend getting yourself a little keyboard to play around on. So we said that this was the note C, right? So looking for the 2 black notes and looking to the note to the left of those is the note C. So if we just play the white notes, okay, most of you might recognize that. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Now, that is the major scale. Okay, the major scale sounds like do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. If it doesn't sound like that, it's not the major scale. The major scale follows a very, very specific combination of intervals. Tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. If it doesn't follow that, it's not the major scale. You also want to remember that when we first had keyboards, they didn't have black notes. Right? It was just the white notes to start off with. Okay? So imagine the keyboard for a little minute, just like it doesn't have any black notes at all. Okay? So just imagine that. Okay? Okay, this is our major scale. And we're going do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Now let's say that you were in Greece and you were a singer and you had your little white note keyboard and you went to go and sing a song and the person plays the first chord of the song. And you go, la, 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 this is far too low for me. I want it higher. Can you start it on this note? Yeah. Well, okay, I can start playing on that note. But as soon as you play the major scale starting on a different note, that doesn't sound right. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti. Oh. We need this note to make a major scale starting on that one. We need this black note to make the major scale. That was starting on the G. G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. So in order to be able to add these other notes to our major scale, because the major scale just evolved to be completely honest, I got no idea how it evolved. I'm not sure anyone does. Any music historians that know the answer to that, stick it on the back of a postcard. I'd love to know. But you can see straight away that as soon as you move the tonal center from the note C, that we end up on, we're having to find these other notes between the white notes. So also remember that very early days, they didn't have electric tuners, they didn't have phones with tuners and all of that sort of stuff. So any kind of piano-like instrument with a keyboard would not necessarily be tuned the same as others. And singing was definitely, probably, well, not definitely, probably, was certainly a more common thing, a very powerful tool that people have been singing forever. And people have definitely got a set range, like a highest note that they can sing. So if they've got a composition, they really need to be singing in the right pitch. So this idea of being able to move keys became more and more important. Now, we already said this G major needed this one sharp. If we look at D major, we need another one. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Now we've got two that we need. The same one that we had before, funnily enough, and we've added this new one, C sharp. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. And then if we wanted to start on an A, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Now we've got the F sharp and the C sharp that we had before, and now we've added a G sharp. So we had to add another sharp for the key of A, and then we moved to the key of E, and now we need 4 sharps in order to make do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. In order to make that happen from the E, we need 4 sharps. And then B, even worse, now we need all 5, and you can see now by the time we've got to B, we needed all of those sharps. And what's really interesting is once we've got those 5 sharps in, once we built the major scale off each of the white notes, we can then play the major scale off of any of the notes, any of the black notes or any of the white notes, and we end up with the major scale. So this is kind of like my best guess as how we ended up with the black notes as they are and not having a note in between everyone, because that for a long time was like, why isn't there a note between B and C and E and F? It just didn't gel for me how that worked at all. So I don't expect you to know or understand at this point, like, oh, there's this many sharps in this different keys or whatever, but I'm hoping that you could hear that I was playing the sound do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do off each of the different white notes, and in order to make that do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do sound, the major scale sound, I had to introduce some black notes, and eventually I found all 5 of the black notes in between. So once we've added those black notes in, it becomes a little bit clearer, this idea of the tones and semitone intervals that were found in the major scale. So starting on C, we've got this tone. This is a semitone and another step. So we've got a tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. Okay, the intervals of the major scale are really, really important. Okay, so now you can see when we do the D major scale, we go tone, we get to there, but now to do another tone, we can't hit that white note, we have to go here. This is the interval of a tone between these two. Sorry, starting on D, tone, tone, semitone. So it's just one now. Tone, tone. Now here again, tone, semitone. So here was the D major scale. Tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. So what we end up with, this is a common confusion, is this idea of key, playing in different keys and different key signatures, different amounts of sharps and flats in each key. It all stems from this idea of having different, still being able to make the tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone work off every note requires a different number of sharps and flats. Now, again, it's part of the practical music theory course, I think, in grade 3. There's a chart there which gives you all of the different root notes, and I ask you to then complete the chart to add sharps and flats to find out what all of the different notes are in all the different keys. It's a really good exercise. Do remember that you have to have the alphabet in full every time you play the major scale. Right? So what I always recommend you do when you're doing that particular chart, you start, if you're doing the key of E major, you'd go, before you even think about sharps and flats, you just write E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. What did I just say? What key? God. I've had a long day and no sleep. We're doing the key of E major, sorry. So E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E. You write that first, then you go E to F. Well, the first one needs to be a tone. So you go E to F, that's only a semitone. Make the F an F sharp, and then that's a tone. So you've always got to stick with that alphabet. And one of the reasons, the answer to a question I asked ages ago about why you would ever want to have an E sharp. Let's say we looked at the key of C sharp major. We've got C sharp, and we go up a tone. And we've got to D sharp. So our notes in C sharp major are C sharp, D sharp. Now we have to go up another tone. And we've ended up on this note, and this note is F, right? We know that because it's a white note. But we have to have the alphabet the same. This was C sharp, D sharp, so we call this note E sharp. So that's exactly the reason, one of the reasons, why we end up having the possibility of calling a note E sharp would be for the C sharp major scale, when we go a tone to D sharp and another tone, we have to call it E sharp, not F, because we have to maintain the alphabet. So, I know I promised this was going to be like the easiest music theory class of all, and I suddenly jumped off onto a whole tirade of sharps and flats in different keys. I'm hoping that the point of all of that was to explain enharmonic equivalent, why sometimes a note like E sharp exists, when we know E sharp is the same as F. So what's the point of that? The point of that is if we were playing in the key of C sharp major. We also need to understand that different keys have different numbers of sharps and flats. Interestingly, they all have a different number of sharps and flats, every key. There's none that have the same. And they only ever have all sharps and all flats. You don't have a mixture of sharps and flats till you get into scales that are not the major scale. So there are some more exotic scales that combine sharps and flats, but not for a good way down the theory path. So it's not something you need to worry about right away. So the major scale construction, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, is the other like super key takeaway. You absolutely have to know that a major scale sounds like that. And it's through finding the do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do that we end up finding all of the notes in all of the different keys. So I'll be very disappointed if there are no questions now. So if you've got some questions, pop them in the Q&A box. And let's see what we got. Rich.
Okay. Kevin is saying, what are double sharps and double flats?
Oh, very good question. So double sharps and double flats are literally two sharps and two flats. So you make two steps. A double sharp, say C double sharp, would go from C to C sharp to D. So D would be exactly the same as C double sharp. Now, again, the point where we use double sharps and double flats is a little bit along the lines of that when I mentioned that we'd have an E sharp if we looked at the C sharp major scale. So if we looked at the uh, F sharp, no, that's a bad example. The G sharp major scale, the G sharp major scale has an F double sharp in it. So every note in the F sharp major scale would be sharpened except the seventh note, which would have a double, sorry, it's G sharp major scale, and it has an F double sharp in it. So that's why double sharps exist. But they're those things that are like, you very rarely see them in the real world. There's little point to them. I think knowing about E sharp and C flat, those things that don't seem immediately obvious why they would exist, understanding that they do exist and that there is a place for them, I think is important. Things like double sharps and double flats, like you see them in the real world very rarely. It's mainly to do with like altered harmony construction. If you're getting into jazz things and you want to alter one of the chord tones, then you would call it by one of the names that was a double sharp or a double flat. But it's pretty rare. I wouldn't be worrying about that until you're way down the line. I think it's unlikely you'd encounter one unless you're reading classical music. Richard, any others?
We've got somebody who must have been practicing too hard, called Bleeding Fingers.
Right.
Heard you mention enharmonic equivalent flats and sharps, and I know you've already given maybe an intimated answer to this, so not explicit. Is there a given reason to call a note that's enharmonic equivalent sharp or flat?
Yes, very good question, actually. So uh, it's to do with the alphabet. And I think I mentioned in it that it's when I was talking about the creation of the C sharp major scale, that you always have to have the alphabet names first. So when you're looking at the notes in A major, we'd have A, B. Now this note, this is C sharp. It's definitely not D flat because we've gone A, B, C sharp. So the context of that note is saying that that note is a C sharp. If we were looking at it, I'm just trying to think of something where we'd call it a D flat, would be if we were playing, where's a good reason why we call it an E flat, a D flat? Where do we know? It's in a funny key for that would be an A major chord if we had a B flat chord. If we had a B flat major chord and then we changed it to a B flat minor, we would then say it was B flat D F to B D flat. So in this key we'd call it a D flat because it was a D in the key of B flat, C, D, E flat. Sorry, my piano skills are rudimentary at best. So B flat, C, D, that would be a B flat major chord. And if we changed it to a minor, we'd still call it a D flat because it's the third of the chord. We've just flattened it. So it's the choice of name between enharmonic equivalents is to do with context of the note. If you just play one random note out of context and like you played a note on the guitar and said, what note's that? And you said it was C sharp and they said, no, it's D flat, then it doesn't make any sense, right? So on its own, it doesn't matter. It's only contextual that it makes sense as to whether you'd call one a particular sharp or a particular flat. Very good question. Anything else, Rich?
I'm just fielding them now if you want to continue.
Okie dokie. I shall then crack into chords and chord construction, and then we'll come back and revisit this if there's any questions to do with the keys. So understanding that a chord is made up in what's called stacked thirds can really help make sense much more on piano than it does on guitar again. In theory, it makes sense, but on piano, like if you write it down, it makes sense, but on piano, it's just so much clearer. So let's jump back over to piano. Here's the note C. Now, if we miss a note and then play the next one, and then miss a note and play the next one, we end up with a C major chord. Now, we can tell that it's a C major chord by looking at the intervals, the fact that it's a tone step, another tone step between the first two notes, and then the next two notes, it's a semitone and then a tone. Right? But you can also just listen. It sounds major. If I play the minor, you'll hear it. If I'm going to move it up an octave, there's major, minor, major, minor. Now, what's important with this, one of the things important about this major and minor thing, often when you just hear a chord, if you're not used to doing any ear training, if you hear a chord, you might find it difficult to hear whether it's major or minor. Often when I was transcribing songs as a kid, I'd find the bass note of a chord, and then I wouldn't really be sure whether it was a major or minor. But if you really listen and you play one and then play the other, you should be able to tell. Like, it's got a different feeling about it. And you might not recognize it straight away, and that's totally fine. Don't feel like you don't have good ears if you don't hear the difference between major and minor right away. But you should hear the difference when you play them right back to back with each other. If I play this and then that, you should hear that one's kind of brighter and one's a little bit more melancholic. Okay, you can usually hear it back to back, so just stay aware of that. So we've constructed this chord by stacking thirds. So playing a note, miss a note, play a note, miss a note, play a note. Okay? This is a C major chord. It's a C because we're starting on a C, and it's a major because we can hear that it's a major sound. And we can tell theoretically it's a major because it's got a tone, so two tones between the bass note and the next note, then a semitone and a tone takes us to the next note. Now, we've already talked about this idea of a key, and we talked about the key of C. We're going to muck around the key of C for a little while now. The key of C has no sharps and flats, right? No black notes involved with the key of C. If you just plonk around on the piano and you make sure you never hit a black note, you're playing in the key of C, right? So if we take our chord here, this C chord, and we move the whole thing up one scale step. Okay, so we've moved the C to the D, we've moved the E to the F, and the G to an A. So we end up with D, F, A. I'm not sure how the audio is coming through on your computer, but have a listen. Can you tell is it major or minor from me playing that? Now I'm going to play the other one, and then back to the first. Which one is it now? I'm pretty sure that it's minor. You can pop it in the chat if you like as we go through. You can hear majors, really happy, minor. Just on its own, it can be hard to tell, but when you play the major and the minor, it's obvious. So far we've got C major, then we moved everything up. This was a note D. We can hear that it's a D minor. Now, if we move the same thing up again, so D to E, F to G, A to B. Okay, what about this one? Is this major or minor? Pop it in the chat if you like. If you want to commit to your decision, pop it in the chat. Okay, let me play the opposing one. It's really obvious, isn't it, when you hear them one after the other. So now we've got C major, D minor, E minor, same thing again. That's the next chord. where are we with this one? Major or minor? We all seem to be happy with that one. So here's the opposing one. Really obvious again. Major, very happy. Minor, not very happy. Same thing. Let's move that up one more step. That was an F major. Move it up again. What's this one? Major or minor? So obvious again. Get used to hearing the major and the minor together. Yeah? Next one. What's this one? Major or minor? Okay, very, very minor. Okay, last one. Let's move it up one more. What is that one? And all of those that have done music theory before are answering the correct answer. It's neither of the ones that we've looked at before. This is a diminished triad. If I move that, this is the minor. And there's the major. Major, minor, diminished. Now, the diminished chord isn't used much in pop music. Would be chord 7. So basically, there are 7 notes in the major scale. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti. 7. And when we build a chord off of each one of those notes, we end up with a set pattern. And this set pattern is major, minor, minor, major, minor. Sorry, that's major again. Minor, diminished, major. I'll say that again, seeing as I just had a brain fart. Major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished, major. So this is chord 1 is major, 2 is minor, 3 is minor, 4 is major, 5 is major, 6 is minor, 7 is this diminished that we never use, and then we're back to chord 1 again. So from the 7 chords in the key, I'm just going to leave off chord 7 because it's like it almost never gets used unless you play jazz. If you're into jazz and you're learning jazz harmony, then this stuff's too easy. So let's just assume there's 6 chords in the key that we actually use. Now it's this pattern: major, minor, minor, major, major, minor. Major, minor, minor, major, major, minor. Right? It's a bit easier to remember. As soon as you add the diminished one in there, it can make remembering that little that pattern a bit harder. It's a major key, so you're going to go major, minor, minor. That's how you remember. It's just got that one major at the start in a major key. Major, minor, minor, then major, major, minor. Okay? Just remember that. So we've got major, minor, minor, major, major, minor. That's the chords in the key, and the order of the chords in the key stays the same no matter what key you move to. Right? So construction-wise, you imagine like we moved, when we added those sharps and flats to those other major scales, in order to build the major scale off different root notes, we ended up using various amounts of sharps and flats, but the sounds stayed the same. The sound of the major scale stayed the same. So long as we do the same idea of going like step, step on the major scale, and we stick to only notes within that major scale, the pattern of chords stays exactly the same every time. So let's say we move to the key of G, and I'm not going to use it on piano now, I'm just going to talk about it. The notes in the key of G are G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, which we're not going to use because it's the 7th one that we do, the diminished one. So we've got to apply our pattern: major, minor, minor, major, major, minor. And we're going to do that to the key of G. So we had G major. The next scale step was A minor. Next scale step B minor. Next scale step C major. Next scale step D major. Next scale step E minor. Now, how often have you come across those chords before when you've been learning a song? That G, C, and D, and then adding A minor, B minor, and E minor. Like, there are so many songs that just use those chords. They're in the key of G. It's a very, very popular, great guitar key. And all of those chords fit together with the G major scale. So if you wanted to improvise over any of those chords, or any one of those chords, in any order, you would use the G major scale to solo over all of them, and it would sound great. I mean, you could make it sound bad if you really tried, but you'd have to try. Generally, it wants to sound great because the chords and the melody have come from the same place. Now, I'm going to demonstrate that in the key of C because I think it'll be more obvious than if I start playing around in the key of G. And my piano skills are pretty atrocious, so soloing or making up a melody in the key of G is like make me fumble around a bit more. So I'm going to do it in the key of C. So look, here's C major chord, and I could use any of these notes to make up a melody. Now, when you play a solo using the major scale on guitar, it's not as obvious as it is on piano. On piano, you can see, like I'm in C major, I'm just going to play the white notes. On guitar, you've got to remember a pattern, and you've got to remember to keep your fingers within that very strict pattern if you're going to stick to the white notes. Takes a little bit more effort. Another reason why I feel like learning these things on the piano just makes it a little clearer, especially this next stage. So all of these chords go in any order, and the major scale can also be played in any order. So basically you end up being able to, as long as you stick to this shape, note, miss a note, note, miss a note, note, you move it around, you're going to be in the key of C. Let's have a little bit of fun. So see there, I'm literally picking random chords. You could pick a common chord progression would be something like C, G, A minor to F. That's the axis of awesome, about 5,000 million songs use that chord progression. And you can improvise it using just the notes here. Went slightly wrong there with the chord progression, but I'm hoping that you get the idea. On piano, it's so obvious to see, here's these chords in the key, and I'm just plonking around going the first chord, the fifth chord, the sixth chord, the fourth chord. That was the sequence that I just played around with at the end there. And so long as I stick on the white notes, I don't touch any of the black ones, it's really hard to make it sound bad. Like I said, it's possible, but the notes really work well together. That's that they've come from the same thing. The chords have come from the scale, so therefore any of those chords in any order in that scale will marry themselves perfectly. It's really important to see that relationship. And I think that getting it going on the piano just makes it more obvious than on guitar. Like you can learn the theory and you can look at the maths and the written down part of the theory, which is definitely useful. I'm not discouraging you, but seeing it on a piano just, in my mind, really made it make sense. A lot of that music theory I understood when I was at college. Like I could pass an exam. Like I understood it well enough to do that. But it wasn't until I got to university and I had to do piano as a second study. And like almost within a week, I was like, oh, that's how you can do this. And, if you want to get into playing basic chords of stuff, it really is that simple just to think in terms of plonking the chords around. I don't want to go too deep into piano, but I'm working on a little course at the moment. Uh, and you think like things, all of these songs that have this progression, the 1, 5, 6, 4 thing. This is the bass notes, but the chords will be 1, 5, 6, 4. I found myself in times of trouble. Mother Mary comes to me. It's that really easy to play piano. Actually, there's a different chord in this particular song, but you get the idea. There's la da 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 da. There's so many songs with these chords, and if you want to play piano or tell your friends that you can, then you just learn this progression, and you'll be able to play a million different songs. And it's not really that hard, and you just play. The thing that you probably want to do is learn to use the pedal as well, because that gives you a little. The pedal, the sustain pedal, holds the chord even when you lift your fingers off, so that gives you a little bit of a chance to make your chord change without the sound stopping. But anyway, that's another story for another time. Now, the next thing I want to do is explain how to transfer this stuff over onto guitar. But first of all, Richard, questions either on the uh, chords in the key, I think we were at, and now, no, we were on sharps and flats still, weren't we? You were going to read over those. All chords in the key. If you got more questions about chords in the key, how that all works, let me know in the Q&A box.
Yep. Okay. I've answered this in the Q&A, but give your take on it. Lee is asking, is the pattern of major, minor, minor, major, major, minor the same for all scales?
It's the same for all major scales. So it doesn't matter what key you're in, if you're in the key of F sharp major or C sharp major or whatever, B flat major. As long as it's a major scale, the order of the chords will stay the same. When we get into other scale types like harmonic minors or melodic minors or modes of any of those things, or more exotic scales, the Hungarian minor scale or whatever, those things, the order of chords changes completely. So you have to learn a different set of chords that goes with that particular scale. The value of doing that and getting involved with that is very limited. So I would strongly encourage you to not go there until you absolutely know why you should go there, right? So if you don't know why you should learn a particular mode, or you don't know why you should learn the harmonic minor scale or the melodic minor scale or whatever scale you've read about somewhere and you think you should know, if you really, really, truly don't have a absolute concrete reason to learn the particular thing, don't waste your time on it. Really, really, it's probably the biggest bit of advice I can give to people, because I've wasted hours and hours and hours, it's probably days or weeks or something, I don't want to think about it too much, practicing stuff that I thought I should know, that I've never really used. And I could argue that maybe there's some benefit because I do a lot of teaching and therefore I'm able to explain stuff because I understand that. It's pretty tenuous. As far as actually playing goes, never used it. It's just like, you know, anyway, don't make the same mistakes that I make. Really understand why you're going to learn something before you spend a lot of time learning it, particularly with scale shapes and playing them up and down, all that. Any other questions, Rich? Or anyone else that wants to jump on and ask
I don't
anything?
know if you intend talking about this today. A couple of people have said the D root chord in the C major scale.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it D minor, not D major?
Okay. So the easy answer is because it sounds like a minor. So if we've got C major here, and we go to the next one up, this is a minor sound, because you can hear this is major, and that one's minor. If we want to understand the theory of the chord construction, it's also helpful to understand the intervallic relationships between the notes. So when we looked at this one, the C major, I said the C to the D, that's a tone, and the D to the E is also a tone, like one step and then another tone step. So two tone steps, 1, 2, 3, 4 semitones, you might want to think of it as. And then the interval from this note to the highest note of that C major chord is a semitone and then a tone, or 3 semitones, 1, 2, 3. Now when we go to a minor chord, it actually reverses it. So this one, the distance between the root note and the middle note, it's called the third, is a tone and then a semitone, or 3 semitone steps. And the note between the middle note and the top one is 1, 2 tones, or 4 semitones. Now you can also see it, that becomes pretty obvious if I do C, and then, Jesus, if I finger that correctly, there's C minor. I'm trying to find a way of making it that, keeping my fingers out of the way. Can I do it that way? Yeah, okay. So there's C major, there's the third of the chord. If I move that down, here it's 1, 2 tones, and then the semitone and the tone. But if I go that way, we've got the tone and a semitone, and then this is a tone and that's a tone. So the why is it a D minor in the key of C is partly because the intervallic relationships within the triad say that it's a D minor, but I've always preferred the sound, listening to the sound of stuff, because music is something we listen to. So if we can learn to hear the difference between different sounds, I feel like that's a more helpful way of making practical sense out of music theory. Yeah, I see a lot of questions when we first did this practical music theory thing, there was a lot of questions come through, and I was just looking at it a bit earlier. There's a lot of questions from people that are really going hard on the understanding the maths thing of music theory, and there's a lot of maths in music theory, and it's cool. It's really interesting. I enjoy that side of music theory, the fact that it's very logical and it's problem solving and all of that. But the way that it works in practice, the way that it sounds, becomes the more important thing. And the stumbling point that a lot of people have is things like they're trying to use triads, and they get into thinking about it too much, and trying to, while they're playing, thinking, oh, it's a G, so it's a G, B, and a D. Where's a G, B, and a D? And they're looking for notes and stuff on the fretboard to try and find a triad shape. It's like, that is too hard for it to come out in the moment. It's kind of like, maybe I can do that sometimes on a good day if my mind's in fully functioning mode, but I wouldn't choose to do that anyway, even if I could, because it's much easier to just learn the shapes, learn where the root note is, and know that there are triad shapes that occur on the fretboard. And as long as you know what the sounds are of those things, then you end up at the same result, rather than having to go through all of these theory steps. I just feel music theory is a great shortcut. It's got a lot of value in studying it, but it's not the end of it. The end of it is making music. It's playing music. It's hearing music. It's training your musical imagination to hear sounds. And I think it's really important to always try and bear that in mind when you're learning music theory, that you want to find ways of practically applying these things, which is why, I named this course Practical Music Theory, because I don't want to teach you the music theory that's not applicable to actually playing guitar, because there's plenty of that. If you want to get into the Lydian chromatic concept of tonal organization by George Russell, very, very, very interesting. But it's only going to be practically applicable if you want to reimagine how our whole system of harmony works. And then mostly people that are going to do that are people that are exploring the outer limits of harmonic construction, that are probably jazz pioneering jazz people would think about that. I've read the book. I've found it really interesting, but it's not. I haven't used any of that sort of level of conceptual stuff in my everyday regular guitar playing. So I think I answered the question, then just like went way over there somewhere, way over yonder in a minor key, probably. Richard, any more questions, or shall I jump on?
Jump along.
Jump along? Okay, so once we've got this idea of the chords in the key, and we looked at it on the piano, I think it's really, really, really helpful then to put that idea onto the guitar, right? So we saw already this idea. I'm just going to do a quick revision because I've been waffling for a bit. Major, minor, chord we never went up. Like there was just this little pattern. Now, the major and minor formations on the piano look different. So we know that on guitar, if we play a major chord or a minor chord, we have to use different fingering. So you might go, oh, it's loads easier on the piano. It seems way easier on the piano when you only play in the key of C. But also remember that for us as guitar players, when we play in the a major scale, we learn one shape, pattern 1, and we learn to play it up and down. And we can move that one shape up and down the neck and play all 12 keys. Whereas as soon as you get into doing it on piano, just to explain, C major scale has this fingering, where you use your thumb, 1, 2, and then thumb hides underneath. But as soon as we do a different key, like E major, now we've got to remember that there's these sharps and flats. There's 2 sharps here, then thumb comes under, and then another 2 there. And then when we get, oh, that was a bit horrible. And then when we do F, if we remember F, on this one we have to do 4 fingers and then skip the thumb under. And that's just the scales. And then to remember all of the different chords and where they fit and whether they're sharps or... then it gets a little bit more sticky. So understanding music theory on piano is really easy. And if you play in easy keys on piano, it's kind of fun and fairly easy to get going on. As soon as you get a little bit further, it gets a lot more complicated very, very quickly. So bear that in mind if you just, I'm just looking for a pick, when you get into doing that. So now let's have a look at applying that on the guitar now. So we knew, where's my focus gone? There we go. So the major scale on guitar, the first position most people learn is this position, box 1. This is a G major scale because that's the note G. You can do it on any, like I said, C major's up here. But it doesn't make any difference. All of those keys are awful on piano. So actually I'm going to do it on here just so it fits nicer on. This is the note A now. It doesn't make any difference. But for the practical application of this music theory, this fingering's nicer. So we're going tone, tone. So you can very clearly see that we've got this. I'm trying to get my third finger out of the way. So we've got from there a tone step. So there's a fret gap. And there's another fret gap. Remember, I'm only contorting my third finger so you can see. And then there's a semitone. So the distance from here to here, from C sharp to D, this is a semitone. Tone, tone. Then it would be another tone. And then we're back at the root. Tone, tone, semitone, tone, tone, semitone, tone. Now, we're not interested in this last note or these last couple of notes, so we only want these 6. Okay? Very easy pattern to remember. Starting on the thicker string, going up 2 frets, up 2 frets, over onto the 5th string, up 2 frets, up 2 frets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, the pattern was major, minor, minor, and then on the 5th string it's going to be major, major, minor. So it's worth playing that and, you know, saying it out loud a few times to remember. Major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, major, minor, minor, major, major, minor. Now, if we play those shapes now as bar chords, you have to do it as bar chords. I'll talk a little bit more about doing it with open chords if you're no good at bar chords yet. But anyway, major, minor, minor. I'm just taking those root notes. Major, minor, minor, major, major, minor. And we've got those chords. This is in the key of A. So playing in the key of A. So we can use any of those chords in any order, and we're in the key of A. We would know that we could solo using the A major scale over any of those chords, but it's this shape that you want to remember. Major, minor, minor, major, major, minor. Also worth remembering just where the majors are. So major, minor, minor, major, major. So there's a root note for a major, move it down a string, there's a major, move it up 2 frets, and there's a major again. So you've got... That's how you can easily remember your 1, 4, 5. All of those sort of songs are all based around that thing. So once we take the music theory from the piano to apply it to the guitar, we learn the first 6 notes of the major scale, but we do it in, it's called a 3-note per string scale pattern. I wouldn't worry about that too much. Just play a note, then miss a note, play a note, miss a note, play a note, move on to the 5th string, play a note, miss a note, play a note, miss a note, play a note. Apply the pattern, major, minor, minor, major, major, minor. You got the chords in the key. Now, I'm going to address the bar chords question first of all, because quite often meet people who are like, yeah, but I struggle with my bar chords. How do I figure out the chords on the key? If you don't know bar chords, then you're kind of restricted in the keys that you're going to play anyway, because pretty much every key has some of the chords which would be usually better played as bar chord. So the key of C, you can actually get away with all of the chords are open as long as you play F chord, which is kind of a bar chord, but there are ways of playing it without the bar. If you play in the key of G, you're going to miss out on the B minor chord, which is only playable as a bar chord. Chord 7 is the other one that's a bit sticky, and we don't play that anyway, the F sharp diminished chord. If you're playing in the key of E or A, you've got the 1, 4, and the 5, but the other ones, the minors, are mostly ones that are going to be inaccessible because of the lack of bar chord thing. So as long as you think in terms of if you want to find out the chords in the key of C, for example, that one's the guitar one. If you wanted to, you need to know the notes on the thickest 2 strings anyway, you should. If you wanted to find out what they are in the key of C, you put your first finger on the C and then play that pattern. Then you should go, well, it's C major, then 1 tone up from that, that's D minor, and then the next tone up from that, oh, that's no E, so C major, D minor, E minor, and then down a string, what's that note? That's F, F major, G major, and then up a tone from that again, oh, that's going to be an A minor. C major, D minor, E minor, F, G, A minor would be the key of C. But, so, you can use that shape to help you find the chords in the key, even of simple ones, and then you would obviously, you'd have to write that down and then play them in the open position. I think another really interesting thing about this is that you can actually play songs and jam songs and take solos and stuff even without knowing the key that you're in. And there's a specific, now I can't think of what the song is. There was a song I learned as a kid, but it was a Dead Kennedys song, and it was in the key of F sharp. And I know that it was in the key of F sharp now, and I get it, and I figured out how to solo over it or whatever. But I could play it and solo over it as a kid, even though I didn't know what the chords were. So just remember, if you're in the key of F sharp, you're at the 2nd fret. You know, as long as you see this pattern of chords in any order. I can't remember what the song was now. Let's say it was that, because I can't remember. As long as you recognize these two major chords, a tone apart, in relation to that one, you know the key you're in, and therefore you can solo. You can solo using the F sharp major scale or the F sharp major pentatonic, and off you go. So I think that this little pattern that you can apply on the guitar is really, really useful. I wish somebody had shown me that when I was like 15. Would have simplified a hell of a lot of things for me if someone had done that. So that's about all. That was my plan for today. Is covered. So if you got any questions about the specific stuff that we've talked about, ask away. And if there's not any questions specifically related to that stuff, I will take other random theory questions as well, if that's there. Richard, how are we going for questions?
I've answered all of the open questions in writing, or you've answered them. So shall we go to just any Q&A?
Okay. Yep, that works. I really need to wet my lips though, because my mouth is super dry, and I'm just looking at. I didn't usually bring my bottle of water, but I've just spotted a little bottle of ginger beer in the corner. Give me 1 second.
Well, Justin is doing that. If you've got a question and you want to join in, if you raise your hand, so I can.
Do you know how to
admit
raise
you?
There's a little button for raising your hand. If you raise your hand, it kind of flags it so Richard's able to spot you, and then he can unmute you. You can ask me your question. So if you got any questions, please do that, or not. Maybe if everyone else has got all of the answers, maybe I can ask some questions. Oh yeah, we got a hand up. Who's that?
Okay, we've got Scott Fowler. Scott, if you want to mute yourself.
Yeah, hey guys, how are you doing?
I'm really good. How are you, Scott?
Good. I've recently been studying the intervals in there's a first iteration and the second iteration of the same thing up and down the fretboard. I
Yeah.
believe that's what it's called.
Inversions.
Inversions.
Yeah.
Yes. Can you talk a little bit about that? It seems to be helping me understand the keyboard, the fretboard a little bit better. Can you talk a little bit about the benefits of doing that?
Okay, that's it. Yep, inversions are fun. I'm going to show you on piano first, because inversions are another one of those things where they're pretty easy to understand on the piano. So let me jump to piano. So that's a C chord. And if we wanted to move to another inversion of C, all we want to do is change the bass note. And the way that we do that is move this lowest note and move it to the same note 1 octave higher. So you can hear they're both the note C. So if we take that chord and move it up there, this is still a C chord. Right? You can hear it's still this chord. And this sounds the same. It's just got a ever so slightly different flavor. And this would be called a first inversion. And if we do the same trick again and we move this note up an octave, we end up with this. And this would be called a second inversion of C. And then we'd be back to root position again. So you have root position, first inversion, second inversion, root position. Right? They're all C's. Now, on guitar, looking at the different inversions is a little rarer. We don't tend to think of harmony in the same way on guitar because we've got these big shapes that we can move up and down the fretboard. It kind of makes it a little easier most of the time. But because we tend to think of these big blocks moving around, we rarely look for nice ways to use inversions. And I think it's another one of the benefits of learning things on piano is that you start to be aware of these changes in ways that might influence your guitar playing. For example, if we're in the key of C and we keep this note, this C, the same, and we just move those two notes up, we've gone from here to here. Now, if you were super sharp, you might have recognized that this is a second inversion if we move that up an octave, but we've ended up with that. So on guitar, we would be more likely to go C to F like a block. We'd move the same shape like this, obviously without the wrong notes. But when you start getting hip with a bit of piano, you go, well, it's a bit easier to do that. Yeah, that's a lot easier. So if I was doing 1, 4, 5, I'd be doing, instead of doing this, which would be the guitar thing, moving the one shape around, you might go from C, F, G, F, okay? So when you start looking at inversions in that way, as thinking about like what notes can stay the same between different chords and how can we manipulate one chord into another chord, then it starts to, I feel like it's a nice way of opening things up on guitar. If I give you a demonstration of some of these sort of triad ideas, instead of always thinking of G, like a big G like that, to a C chord, to a D, let's just pick on that as an example. G, C, D, C. If I go G, C, I know that top note's the same each time. If I'm going from a G to a D, that would be the standard guitar way to do it, but I might play, and now I'm using this as like a C-shaped version of a D chord. But all I'm thinking really is it's a G, that note's staying the same, this note's moving back a tone, and that note moving back a semitone. So then we end up with these sort of things like having G, C, D, C. Instead of now, I'm not even saying one of those is better than the other one. To be honest, a lot of times I'd probably prefer to play the strumming of the big chord because it just feels better. It's got a little bit more rhythm to it, whatever. But when you start exploring harmony, as far as like triads go, that's where you open the door to using these other more intricate kind of voicings and more options with the way that you move from one chord to another chord. So it keeps going further as well into suspension. No, I don't want to go there. There's other. It keeps going. This idea of looking at the relationships between one chord and another, and how small a change you can make to signify the change between chords. That's the kind of thing that I find really interesting. And when I'm playing piano, pretty much every time I'm playing piano, I'm learning new tricks that end up influencing my guitar. I'm very clunky on piano, but I really enjoy it, and I find it a really beneficial thing to explore. So, good question. Anyone else? Oh, there's a few hands up there now.
We have 2 hands up if you're happy to take them.
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, Jeremy Gottwaltz.
So just unmute
Hi,
yourself,
Justin.
Jeremy. Yeah, there we go. How you doing, fella? You good?
I'm doing well. Thanks for taking questions.
That's okay.
I was reading today this food for thought piece you did on manipulation versus memorization and being able to adjust the chords based on knowing that if you flat a third, it's a minor, etc. My question goes to using this concept to memorize the notes on the fretboard, or get all the notes, have the notes at your disposal on the fretboard. It seems to me it would be much more natural to learn by experience and playing, right? But I don't have a lot of time. and I don't gig every day, right? So would you recommend people doing specific exercises to try and get the notes under there, spending the time to try and get the notes under their fingers, i.e., playing all the C's across and down the net, that sort of thing. All the A's, all the G's.
Okay.
Is that investment worth it for somebody who wants to say play jazz in the future, for example?
Okay, so that was an interesting tale on that question. So it depends on what you want to get out of it. That's the defining thing. So if you want to play, if guitar for you is something where you got a really stressful job and guitar for you is your de-stressor, it's the time away from the kids and away from the missus where you're sitting in a room by yourself and it's your time to be on your own and explore some stuff and make some music and have some fun, then learning all the notes on the fretboard, if it interests you, then great, do it. But if it's not immediately applicable, it kind of goes back to that thing that I was saying about the scales and really knowing why it is that you want to learn something before you invest a lot of time in learning it. So somebody who just wants to play songs and have a bit of fun, understanding the chords in the key, I think is really useful because it'll help them be able to pick out tunes by transcribing or whatever to hear that stuff. If you want to play jazz or you want to play classical guitar or you want to manipulate chords to be able to change them one to the other, then yeah, you're going to need to know the notes on the instrument. And it is a funny thing that guitar players feel for some reason that they don't need to know the notes on the guitar, but on every other instrument, almost every other instrument, it's just the starting point is knowing what the notes are. Like you couldn't say that you played cello if you didn't know what all the notes were. No cellist over the age of 7 doesn't know the notes on their cello. Like it's just part of the deal. But we're like, well, we got 6 strings and like all of these frets. Like I can't remember all of that stuff. So not knowing the notes on the fretboard is going to limit how far you can extend yourself. And if you can see that at some point in the future you might want to have that, then it's probably a good thing to do. Because what you don't want to do is go, I'm never going to do that, and then ignore it, and then suddenly go, oh, actually, I really would like to play some jazz, and then go, oh, God, I've got to learn the notes on the fretboard, and then having to really cram that. Whereas what you probably find more helpful is doing a little bit of practice over a longer period to learn those notes. I'm pretty sure I mentioned them already on the course, but the exercises that I found most helpful for myself were doing the find a note exercise, which I think I first saw in a Joe Satriani magazine article or something. Now I've just dropped my pick, and where's all of the other pick? Where's my pick pot gone? There it is. And the idea of that exercise is to go through and play the notes. Where's that? There we go. Is to play like all the C's and just play every C on the thicker string and then gradually work your way up and be able to play through all of the C's and then do all of the G's. God, I haven't done this for so long. I'm actually surprised I managed to get away with that. And then I do all the D's. Hey! I was sure I was going to pants that up because it has been rather a long time since I've done the exercise. But that particular one I feel like is a really good one. You don't start doing it fast like I was doing it there. You do it slow enough that you know that you don't get it wrong, right? So even if it's like, where's the next C? It's the A string, A sharp B, C, there. Might be that when you start. That's okay. Once you can do it consistently, you pop it to a metronome slowly, and then gradually bump the ticks up on the metronome, and it makes you think a little faster. So that was one exercise really good. The other one is the thinking across the fretboard, and that has the advantage of building a kind of a mental map. So you probably start on the easier frets and go, okay, at the 5th fret from the thicker string, we got an A, and then we got a D, and then we got a G, and you try and name the frets going from the thicker string to the thinner string, then the thinner string to the thicker string on any fret that you like. Really, it doesn't really matter. You can, I think on the website lesson, I suggest writing down all of the numbers 1 to 12 and randomizing the direction that you do it. But it's the kind of thing that you could do at traffic lights in the car and just go, okay, 7th fret, what are they? Let's go. And then just naming the notes through from thinner string or thicker string, whatever. And those sort of exercises, it will help. And you know, as I said, the interesting sting in the tail for you then was you said, oh, if you want to learn jazz in the future, like, yeah, if you want to get into jazz, you really notes on the fretboard, understanding diatonic harmony, chords and keys, that stuff. That's like the starting point, really, of the harmony that you need to understand. So, good luck with that. It is worth it. It's definitely worth it. If as long as there's things that you want to do that use it, it's definitely worth the effort. Okay, I'll take that last question and then I better disappear because it's
Yeah. Okay.
nearly
One
10
more
o'clock and I've got a
patient
busy
hand
day
up
tomorrow.
from Bleeding Fingers.
Yep. I hope they're not actually bleeding, by the way, sir.
Hi, they're not bleeding at the moment. I haven't changed any strings.
Ah,
They
okay.
only bleed when I change strings. I tend to stick them through it. This is a really, I feel a bit embarrassed about asking this question, really, because it's probably a really basic thing. But I have Parkinson's, and playing guitar really helps with the tremor on my left hand. It really does. It's amazing.
Fantastic.
But I just, could you please explain to me? I've been working through the theory course, and I've got to the point where we're dealing with triads, and my short-term memory is absolutely shot. Could you please explain to me, as if you were explaining to a 5-year-old, exactly what a triad is?
Okay. Of course. I'm sorry if you don't understand it. It's that I haven't explained it well enough, right? So don't feel bad. There's no such thing as a stupid question, just bad teaching. So that's on me. So a triad is a 3-note chord. We can easily remember that because it's a tricycle or a triangle. Tri is the 3. So a triad is just a 3-note chord. There are different choices as to how you define that exactly. Strictly, it would be when you only play 3 notes. But I feel like on guitar, most of the time when we play bigger chords, they're still triadic as well. We're only playing 3 notes, just sometimes we're doubling some of them into different octaves. But there's still only 3 notes, 3 names of pitches. Now, triads are built by stacking thirds. So on piano, let's go back to piano because it's nice. There's a C. If we built a triad from that, we miss one note of the scale and we play the next note. Then we miss another note of the scale and we play the next note. So that is a triad. And triads can be major, like this, or they can be minor. Or they can be diminished, or they can be augmented. I wouldn't worry about learning diminished and augmented triads unless you know exactly why you want to learn them. Not very super useful. You won't encounter them very often. So just think of triads as being the major and minor. But also understand that the same idea applies to the guitar here. If we look at one of our open chords, like the C, the notes that we're playing for the C chord are C, E, G, exactly the same as the C, E, G on the piano, and then this is another C, and that's another E. So we're playing C, E, G, C, E. That's what we play when we're playing a C chord. So if we flop that back onto the piano, exactly the same thing. C, E, G, C, E. That's the guitar chord, our open C. Same as... So when we get into the application of triads on guitar, all of our basic chords, E, A, or C, A, G, E, D, A minor, D minor, E minor, all of those are going to be 3-note chords. We're just doubling some of the notes. If we look at E, we have E, B, E, G sharp, B, E. So we've got 3 E's, 2 B's, and 1 G sharp, but it's still only E, G sharp, and B. It's only really 3 pitches. So the that would be the idea of a triad. Triads in practice are either going to be understanding how harmony works. I think it's a lot easier just to think in 3 notes and see the 3 notes on the piano or 3 notes in the music theory. But understanding that applies back to the guitar, you might double loads of the different notes, and then you end up with these, bigger, more guitar-friendly or guitar-styled chord grips. Hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, let us know, or let Rich know, and we'll see if I can't find another way of explaining that too. But I'm hoping we got there for that. And good luck with the Parkinson's thing. My dad's got Parkinson's as well, and so well familiar with it. Yeah, and I know there's different physical things. I don't think my dad plays guitar. He sings a lot, but maybe I should get him playing guitar as well. Who knows? There might be somebody that he knows that can teach him to play guitar. So that's covered all of the things that I was hoping to do. I'll be honest, I haven't decided on the next theory class topic yet. I was going through the questions earlier to think about what to tell you the next class was going to be about, but most of the questions didn't seem to link into a cohesive theme. So what I'm probably going to do is take another little survey for the next one with questions. I know we covered a lot of stuff over the last few weeks, last couple of months with this little series. So it's probably about time to rejig that and find out what's going on. One thing that's for sure that is going to happen, in case you're going to ask, is in the new year, it's my intention to re-record a lot of those early beginner lessons in the practical music theory course to include more piano. Now that I've got a setup where I can